Hello, everyone. Brian here, the Motley Mix Merchant. Welcome to a special episode of M Cubed. This is my very first interview episode. I get to turn the tables on somebody who does a lot of interviewing on his YouTube channel, and he becomes the interviewee. It is Dominic Carone, the primetime treasure hunter. You may know him from YouTube or from the Facebook group that he moderates, but he's a very busy man. But I was able to tie him down for about half an hour or so. We discussed eBay, the eBay selling business, how things are changing in this day and age. And I got a little bit of information from him on how he started in this whole thing. So hope you enjoy it. It's filled with great information, especially for newer eBay sellers. And so I learned a lot, and maybe you will too. So my interview with Dominic Carone, the primetime treasure hunter, is coming up right now. It is my pleasure to welcome Dominic Carone to the show, the primetime treasure hunter, as you probably know him better. Dominic, thank you so much for being here. It is a pleasure to have you on as my first interview guest. Thanks for joining me.
Wow. I am honored. Hopefully the first of many, but I appreciate you having me on, Brian. Thank you very much.
I do hope it's the first of many, but I thought I'd start with the best, and so everybody else is going to live up to your.
Don't make me blush. It's too easy to do.
High expectations now from all future guests. So we're turning the tables a little bit on this episode because the interviewer is becoming the interviewee. I get to interview a gentleman who does all kinds of interviews on his Primetime Treasure Hunter YouTube channel. And so I'm going to ask you all about how you got into this business, and we'll talk about some of the current issues going on with reselling and eBay, that kind of thing. So I guess the first question is, you are do I have this right? You're a neuropsychologist by trade?
Yeah, you have that right.
And you've got a huge Facebook group that you're in charge of. You've got a YouTube channel with over 12,000 subscribers. And I guess my first question is, what do you do with your spare time, Dominic?
Yeah, really. I mean, my spare time is pretty much taken up with all this reselling stuff, because when you tack this onto a full-time job, it's really tough to juggle other things. But I do have a family as well. I have a wife and 2 kids. You know, sometimes you just have to carve it out. Like, for example, you know, I love sports. I make sports analogies with reselling on my channel all the time. Michael Jordan, obviously, you know, best basketball player ever. Grew up watching him, and they just came out with a documentary series called The Last Dance, chronicling the final season where they were going for that second three-peat. It's a 10-part series, and I started taping it Sunday night. Couldn't watch it, you know, as it was happening, but I have it on DVR, and I just carved out an hour last night, you know, with my son, and just said, we're putting down whatever we're doing, and we're just watching it. We're just watching it. And we just watched it. And so that's what you have to do sometimes. You just have to just make that time for those other things. You could always take it up with something else, but, you know, you have to try to balance all those different things out.
Absolutely. Sometimes you just have to take a break.
Yeah.
Chill. Relax. Relax.
Yep. Yeah. Or else
so let's go back a ways.
Yeah. Or else you burn out.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
How did you get into this reselling thing? What got you started in doing reselling?
It's a great question. I really always talk about technically 2 start points. If you really want to trace it back to the beginning, I would say that it goes back to when I was a teenager, and I would go to a place called the Englishtown Auction. It was basically an outdoor flea market, and I would go there, and I would just set up with my friends, and get there early in the morning. We'd set up a plastic table with some chairs and sell some of our comic books. So it technically was reselling. We were just selling off parts of our collection. Now, we weren't purchasing it originally with the intent to resell it, but eventually that became something that we were doing a little bit. But then fast forward to when I went to graduate school. So this is around 1998, 1999. Moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and there was another big outdoor flea market type of area, but just dwarfs the size of the one in New Jersey. It's called the Swap Shop in the Fort Lauderdale area, and this is around the time that eBay came out, and so we were just they had Yahoo auctions and stuff. eBay was just an auction-only site. My wife and I would go on the weekends to this outdoor flea market area, and we would just have a great time just picking up small toys, small books, collectibles, Peanuts / Snoopy stuff, whatever we could find that we thought was just cool, interesting, collectible. And we would just put it on eBay. And sometimes we'd just be amazed at the prices that these things would go for. Sometimes we'd mess up and, we weren't able to, make the sale. We realized we picked something up that was worthless. Because remember, back then you couldn't check comps on your phone. There was no such thing as apps or anything like that. So we learned a lot just by trial and error. And so I did that for many years throughout graduate school, gave me some, spending money and stuff like that. And then I just did it here and there as I was pursuing my professional career. And then at a certain point, as my kids got older, I started, right now they're 14 and 16. I started to try to rebuild my comic book collection from when I was younger. And I started to see how much money there was in terms of flipping comic books and reselling them. And so I started the quest to purchase collections of comics. So buying them in the hundreds to the thousands and flipping them. And then I also started going to garage sales again and flea markets and estate sales and buying other things besides comics and really kicking up the the eBay business and opened an eBay store, and then was following things on social media as well with regards to reselling, and decided eventually to start my own YouTube channel and Facebook group. The Facebook Reselling Resource Center is just about at 17,000 members. Both of those have been around for about 2 years now. So both those things are good.
Yeah, I'm one. Was there a specific point that you can remember where you said, there's money to be made in this? I'm doing this for myself, for my own comic book collection and everything, but there's some good money to be made in this. Was there a specific point or a specific comic book that you remember?
Yeah, actually, there was a day where I was with a fellow collector and dealer, and he would just get these big collections that would come into him, and he started opening them up and going through them. And this would happen basically every time I would go and visit this guy. He would get these big collections in, and I just marveled at the amount of value that he was getting, high value for a low expenditure, relatively low expenditure. Like, he'd pay several hundreds of dollars to take someone's collection off of their hands, but yet in this collection there was thousands of dollars worth of stuff. Now you have to take your time to go through it, but I remember seeing that and just saying to myself, this is the last straw. Like this one right here, I've got to try to get in on this in some way, because it could be pretty lucrative. And turns out I'm glad I did it, because I was also able to bring the knowledge of collecting comics from when I was a kid to then being able to identify things that would be of value now that I'm older and looking back.
And that helps a lot too. If it's something that you're interested in, and this gets along the lines of, for all eBay sellers, no matter what the item or what the line or niche that you're in, if it's something you're interested in and you've got some knowledge in it, it makes it a lot easier to be reselling things in that specific area.
Yeah, I suggest for people who are new, who are starting out, that one of the things that you should do is find an area like that, something that pretty well. You don't necessarily have to be an expert in it, but it's something maybe that was a hobby of yours, something that you have a lot of interest in, and use that to form the base of your eBay business. And then you just diversify from there. So maybe you'll get some things that are related to that area, but not primarily the focus. For example, with comic books, a lot of people who like comic books also love video games. If you open up almost any comic book in the 1980s, you're gonna see ads for video games. So maybe you have some knowledge about that, because people who read comic books love to play video games and vice versa. So maybe you start tacking some of that onto your business, and then eventually you start purposely expanding into other niches that you're trying to learn. You're trying to gain knowledge that other people have that you don't, and then you just start to build off of that. Like for example, for me last year, it was postcards was one of the big areas I really expanded into, and I'm very happy that I did. I just sold a postcard the other day that I got for pennies. I sold it for $35, and so things like that are fun when you could branch into new areas as well.
Was there ever something that you realized in hindsight, man, I'm glad I knew not to do that? I'm glad I learned this early in my journey so that I didn't lose money on it. What was something that you learned early on that you're glad you learned early on?
Well, definitely the biggest thing is checking comps, because that was the thing that I didn't have available to me when I was sourcing in South Florida. It just wasn't possible. So there were a lot of times, like I mentioned, that I bought something, I saw it, and it looked cool, it looked interesting. I'm like, wow, this is just amazing. I've never seen one before. I would pick it up. I go home, I'm all excited. Now I'm home, I'm wired into my my computer, and I look it up, and there's 50 other people selling it for $4.99, and maybe I spent $3 on it. That type of stuff would happen a lot. And so with the availability of the app, and it's kind of interesting, because even though we have the apps right there on our phones, they're readily available, a lot of people still to this day, to go out and they source and they never bother to check comps, and they still do what I was doing in Florida. So now, certainly I have experience to bring to bear that I could know certain things and say, yes, that's valuable. No, that's not. I'm not going to pick that particular thing up, or I am going to pick it up. But if there's any area of doubt whatsoever, I'm always checking the comp, so I know what I want the purchase price to be. I've got to figure in what the shipping is going to be, what fees are going to be. All those sorts of things have to go through your head when you're making purchasing decisions, and that helps keep your business profitable. So definitely, I would say the lesson of checking comps, making sure that you do that, because again, if not, you're going to get burned.
Let's just jump back to your comic book collections and your reselling for 1 second. What's the
Sure.
single best comic book flip you ever did?
That is that is Giant Size X-Men #1. I would say it's the single best comic book flip. I got it for, believe it or not, I actually got it for less than $1. And some people are going to say, how could that possibly be? I sold it for $1,250. And the reason that I was able to get it for less than $1 is because you have to purchase things like that from people who are not the original collector. Generally speaking, there could be some exceptions. Someone just doesn't care. They say, all right, I just want to blow everything out here, have it, I'm done with things. Sometimes, but that's very rare. So usually you maybe get something like that off of a relative, or you might be fortunate to get it at some type of estate liquidation or something like that. I actually got this through a private ad that I placed on Craigslist, in which I told people, and I still do this, that I'm looking to buy things that are estate liquidations, and I will actually come to the particular place, and we'll see if we can make a deal. And it turns out this guy had a lot of stuff. He worked for a company, Got Junk, and so he was just clearing things out from estates, and if he saw something that he thought was cool or valuable, he would hold on to it. And I told him the first time I went to see him that I like comics. He said, well, the next time you come back, I actually have some comics at my house that I took out of some of these houses. He goes, I don't know anything about them. He goes, so, if you want, I'll bring 2 of the boxes. So he brings 2 of the boxes. I flip through them. I don't even know Giant Size X-Men #1 is in there. I don't even know it's there. I just flip through and I see there's some old X-Men, there's old Avengers books, stuff like that. So I said, okay. So I just gave him one price for everything. And that wasn't just the comics. It was like, there's like tons of stuff. I mean, I filled my car up like, 3 different times and wound up getting just tons of stuff for, a couple $100. Anyway, about a year later, I literally right here, right next to me, right here, I was going through one of the comic boxes from him, and I looked through and I said, you got to be kidding me. This Giant Size X-Men #1. I put it up. I sold it for $12.50 within literally 15 minutes or less.
Wow.
Crazy. That book
That's
is
crazy.
insane. You should look it up. It's an amazing book. It's basically the first time that the new Avengers really kind of appear. It's like this crossing or passing of the torch from the old Avengers to the I'm sorry, not Avengers, X-Men, from the old X-Men to the new X-Men. So it's a holy grail kind of book for comic book collectors, and yeah, it was just amazing to be able to get it.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the world these days, especially the reselling world. Things are obviously a little messed up right now with what's going on with COVID-19 and everything. But when this whole situation first started, you put out a video, and it really resonated with me when you talked about reselling and being able to still ship things to people is important in these times, because people are looking forward to getting stuff in the mail, and they're looking forward to the uplift that they get when they get a package in the mail. Maybe you could just expand on that a little bit for us.
Yeah, I brought that up because I saw some people the first few days, maybe first week where this happened, people said they were actually going to shut down their eBay business, or wherever it was that they were selling, because they were going to try to release the strain on the postal service. Now, with regards to the postal service at that time, they didn't have a strain that they were reporting. They were actually saying operations are running normally with isolated areas of very minimal disruption. So that wasn't really, in my view, a justification to shut down your eBay business. And I was trying to let people know that in addition to that, there's another positive reason why you should still keep it going, that people are locked inside, or they're staying inside for long periods. That visit from the postal worker with an item that they want to keep themselves busy, could be a movie, could be a sticker book for a kid, could be some baseball card, whatever it is, that person's really looking forward to that, and you're able to provide that for that person. Puzzles that they could spend hours of time playing with, Legos that some kid could spend hours playing with in the basement, those types of things really bring a lot of joy to people. And that's something that I was trying to make sure I conveyed to the reselling community, that that's a big important role that you play during this time.
Absolutely. And I agree with you 100% on that line of thinking. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this is really going to change. It's changed reselling now, of course, but let's get into your thoughts on how it's going to change reselling in the future. How do you see this affecting, especially maybe smaller eBay resellers?
Well, I think that smaller eBay resellers, what many of them were doing prior to this, and I would see this comment made every once in a while in Facebook groups and sometimes in YouTube comments, where people would say, well, I have a death pile, or I have dead stock. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I need to get listed. It's just sitting around and I can't get to it. And a lot of people would chime in and say, well, you shouldn't put anything else up for sale and go out and purchase more stuff until you sold what you already have. So that will prevent you from accumulating all this stuff. And now comes to bear that actually having all that stuff is actually really important. I think people are going to try to create what I would say in the future are strategic reserves, just like you would do in the government, where you have a strategic national reserve, or strategic reserve in a state for times of emergencies. It's the same thing with reselling, because if you cannot go out to source, if everything is shut down, what are you going to do? How are you going to get stuff? It's going to be really difficult. And so I think that's one thing, Brian, that's going to happen, is that people are going to change their mindsets with regards to what used to be referred to as death piles and in dead stock. I think people will give a more positive term, like life piles or health piles or something like that, because they come in handy when you really need them.
I call mine my profit pile.
Yeah, profit pile or something like that, or your strategic reserve, something like that. I don't think it'll be viewed as derisively as it once was.
Now, it's interesting you're talking about sourcing and not having anything to sell, and I sort of ran into that problem a little bit. I was getting down there with the last of my reserves, but I think it's also going to change, and you talked about this very recently, it's going to change the estate sale business, and the people that resellers get their product from, their business model is going to have to change as well, and that's going to help us when it comes to finding products to sell for resale.
Yeah, so estates, this has really hit the estate sale industry hard, because estate sale dealers rely on being able to get, now it could be a relatively small amount of people, but they're still clustered together, into a small home, small residential area. They're often waiting in lines outside. They rely on that. That's close physical contact. You cannot social distance at an estate sale if it's run the way it normally is. And so if a state restricts the ability to do that, they just cannot run the sale in the traditional manner. And so estate sale dealers are doing a couple of things different. One thing, the first thing that I saw that they were doing is that they were doing virtual sales, in the sense that they would send out an email to people who are their regular customers and are on their email list, and they'd send them some of the bigger items, or they'd send them like pictures of box lots, for example, and they'd say, listen, this stuff's going to be at the house on such and such a day. here's your preview of it. If you want to come and see a specific thing, let me know. We'll arrange a time. You come over. You'll just go in the house yourself, or maybe with a 2-3 other people, but we'll keep everyone spread apart. And you could look in different rooms at these items. And then if you want to make a purchase, you can make a purchase. So that's one way of doing it. But another way that I saw more recently is that people are just actually starting to put stuff on online kind of estate sale auction sites more. These existed before COVID-19, but what the point was, from an estate sale dealer who's been running estate sales for about 100 years in a family-owned business, his fourth generation, said this is, everyone's just going, a lot of people, not everyone literally, but a lot of people are going to start going on there to sell their stuff. So if you're not looking right now at places like liveauctioneers.com is one that's really good. There's a whole bunch of them out there. You're missing out, because those are places where there's going to be a lot of items purchased, and more people, especially millennials, Generation X, they're going to go on there because they're used to shopping all the time on their phone. They grew up with a computer. They're used to doing it. So, you're going to see a lot more of that. A lot more things are going to go online.
Yeah, we've got a site that's very popular here in Ontario called highbid.com, and I've gotten a few things off of Highbid, and that's definitely, it's full estate auctions and everything right online, and that's I think of the way a lot of this is going to go, very much so. Do you think this is a bad time for somebody to start up an eBay business, or is this a good time because of what's going on?
Well, it could be a good time depending on if you have if you have inventory available. Now, if you don't have inventory readily available, in the sense that you didn't go to the traditional sourcing locations that that we generally talk about, garage sales, estate sales, that sort of stuff, you would not believe the amount of stuff you could find to list on eBay to make money just based on doing a spring cleaning in your home. There's just tons of that stuff around. You may have old puzzles sitting around that people want. Video games, absolutely huge. People buying a ton of those. Educational, kids games, like those little refrigerator toy games that you'd put on the refrigerator that had the little letters that would magnetize and go in, and they'd say the letters of the alphabet, and the kids would learn the letters and the sounds. Those things are hugely popular right now because people are trying to find ways to educate and also entertain their kids. So anything that does that, if you have that stuff laying around, your kids are older now, you want to sell off some of that stuff, sell off some old clothes, it's a good time. And the reason why it is a good time is because there are so many people who are not out doing regular brick and mortar shopping. Plus, brick and mortar stores are kind of like those boring middle of the road kind of brick and mortar department stores like Macy's and JCPenney's and Kohl's. This is probably going to be the nail in the coffin for a lot of those places. Neiman Marcus, which was more upper scale, they closed down, well, not closed down, but they filed for bankruptcy the other day. So it's not looking good for them, and maybe a close down might happen in the future for them. So there's going to be less of these brick and mortar places available, and more people are going to go to online places like like Amazon, like eBay, like Mercari, like Poshmark, to go and find stuff. So it's just going to become more commonplace. As such, you want to have your merchandise on some of the, well, at least one or more of those forums.
And it's interesting too, you talk about selling things from around your house. You're not going to be able to sell things from around your house for probably the next year at garage sales and hands-on flea markets and that kind of thing, because no one's going to come to them, first of all, because they don't want to get too close to other people. So if you want to get rid of stuff in your house, unless you're donating it, you're going to be selling it online.
Yes. I think most are. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens as these different states which are affected in a different way, because it's not, I'm in New York, which is the worst hit state in the nation. So it's bad over here. Now I'm in central New York, so it's far worse downstate, like in Long Island, New York City area, but still it's still bad in the Syracuse area here, and there's a lot of restrictions in place on us. And I mentioned this in one of the videos that I'm walking around the neighborhood, and the neighboring neighborhood, one next over, has a sign for garage sales on May 1st and 2nd. Has not been taken down, and I am very curious to see what is going to happen on that weekend. Are there going to be people who still host a garage sale? Because we're starting to get into a divide in some regions of the country where some
Oh, yeah.
people are saying, you know what, I still want to go out. I want to take the chance. I want to risk things. So what are resellers going to do when they look, or they're driving maybe back from the store? They see someone set up for a garage sale. Maybe no one's even there at the time. It's just one person set up with all the sorts of stuff you like. Are you going to stop off or not? So these are going to be, I don't have the perfect answer right now, but these are going to be interesting situations that start popping up in the spring and the summertime for us.
Absolutely. And it's funny too. I even think I was even had to double think about it when I was buying things on online auctions. Do I want to buy this and win it, and then I have to go to the location to do a pickup? Is that going to be a safe situation for me? That's something that even in the back of your mind when you're trying to buy things online now, if it's not going to get shipped to you.
Right. Yeah. There are people right now who are still finding ways to source through Facebook marketplace deals.
Yep, I've done a bit.
OfferUp, Let Go. But if you're going to do that, you do need to maintain, proper social distancing procedures. There's ways to do it. I mean, food delivery folks are doing this right now with contactless delivery. You pay for it ahead of time. You just prearrange. Okay, I'm going to leave this, right on the chair outside your,
Yep.
Outside your door, something like that. And even the post office workers are told the same thing. Ironic funny. The other day I went to hand something to the postal worker because I just had a label printed out and I wanted to hand it to her because she had picked up the package she was about to leave, and she turned around. She's like, all right, don't give it to me. Just put it on the chair, go back in, and I will come up and pick it up. So, that's the kind of procedures people are going to have to do if they want to do these kind of deals. And you could pay, a lot of people don't know, you could pay for your Facebook marketplace deals on PayPal and a lot of the other places. You could just arrange to do it that way. And so you don't even have to exchange like a physical cash form or anything like that.
Yep. Yeah. The resale business is changing daily, weekly as we go here through 2020. Yeah. So yeah, it's something to be part of. And I've only been doing it for about a year now, just started up steady part-time for about a year. So okay. What would you say to somebody, say like me, who is just in the midst of starting to grow their store, getting into it and really trying to make a regular, steady part-time income from this? What are 2 tips that you might have to keep it going and keep building even through these times right now?
I would say the number one thing is I'd say 2 things. I'd say number 1, create a goal. What do you want to get out of it? Is it something financial? Is it something that you want to do, like you have a YouTube channel? Is that something you want to grow as well? Because that's part of your reselling business also, and you could make money doing that. So do you want to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year or something? You have to create concrete goals for yourself, and then you have to come up with an action plan on how you're going to achieve that, how you're going to measure your progress. And then the second key to that, after you have those goals, you have to make them measurable, and then you have to be consistent in your approach. And that's a big problem a lot of people have. They set a goal. They say, all right, I want to do, I want to do a video a day, or 5 videos a week on YouTube, or I want to make, 10 sales a week or 20 sales a week. So I have to list X number per day. So they say those things, but then they don't actually get up and do those things that are required to achieve that goal. So you really, really have to stay focused, get into a consistent routine. And once you establish that consistent routine, once you go every day and you keep doing that, just like going to the gym. If you keep going to the gym every day or 5 days a week, like you said you're going to, if you even think about skipping it once the routine is established, then you start to feel bad, you start to feel guilty, and that kind of helps overcome any kind of laziness or excuses that you might make to yourself. I won't do it today, because you just don't want to break the routine. That helps keep you going. So that's been a key for me, is consistency, no matter what's going on. Of course, there could be emergencies and stuff that happen, and you have to reschedule things. Things don't always work out as planned, but then work around it. Figure out a way to work around it and get right back on schedule as soon as you can.
It's funny you brought that up as one of the points. That's where I noticed a big change in my entire business model. I committed to listing a minimum of 3 items per day back in the middle of January, and I've been doing it every single day since, and I've noticed probably a 50 to 75% increase in my sales. It's definitely part of the eBay algorithm algorithm that you want to be consistent, trying to get sales to grow.
Yeah, they do like to see that. They want to see that you have stuff. They want to see an active account. That does help. And I'll throw in a little bonus one for you there, Brian, if that's all right.
Okay. Bonus, folks. Bonus. Listen up.
This is something I noticed as well, is that it's good to have a plan. Like I said, it's good to have those goals and everything. But since things are always changing, you never know what's going to happen. Your goals are going to change over time as well. You're going to grow your goals as you achieve one thing. Then you have to try, you're going to try to get to the next step. Well, what got you to that first step is not necessarily what you need to do to get to the second step. So the other part is flexibility. You have to be willing to be flexible and to create new plans, new approaches. So for example, instead of saying to yourself at a certain point, I'm going to list 3 things a day, at a certain point, you might have to say to yourself, you know what? I have to list $300 worth of items per day. That's what I have to do. And that might just be one listing for something that's worth $300. Or it might be 10 things, who knows? It just depends on, what kind of inventory you have, but that might be the model where you have to shift to, is as opposed to number of items, it's to value of inventory.
Good point. Very good point. I've seen other YouTubers talk about that in videos too, is that set yourself money goals as much as numbers goals, because that's sometimes the key as well to getting the sales.
Yep, absolutely.
Dominic, I want to thank you very much for your time. You're a super busy guy, and I'm not going to keep you any longer than necessary tonight. I know you're preparing for an interview tomorrow you're going to be doing, and you've had some great interviews lately on this channel, especially. You talked to an eBay manager last week, which was very interesting.
She was great. She was willing to come on and do an interview, and it was very open-ended. I was able to ask her anything I wanted to. I worked in questions from the chat, and like I said on the interview, I don't expect that they're necessarily going to have the exact answer, for all of our problems right then and there. But there is value to getting someone from a senior level on eBay on video, hearing questions from resellers and hearing suggestions from resellers. So there's documentation of it. That in and of itself, there's value to that.
And with a new CEO, let's see how things go for resellers now, and how eBay starts changing things when it comes to how they treat some resellers sometimes, maybe.
Yeah, that's a big issue. And, people could speculate all they want about what is going to happen with the new CEO. I put up a video on a whole bunch of suggestions that I had. It was called a memo to the CEO. That was another one that I did recently. I think I had 30 different suggestions and points for him to consider if he ever saw it. But, I'm a clean slate kind of guy, and I'm just going to give the guy a chance, and we're going to see what happens. And if he does things that are good for sellers, I'm going to say that. If he does things that aren't good for sellers, I'm going to say that as well. But I at least want to give the guy a chance, see what he does, see what initiatives, see what any innovations he tries to bring to the company, and hopefully it goes in a good direction for sellers.
All right, my friend, one final question. How about some final words of wisdom for us less than 2-year eBay sellers? What's some little nuggets that you may have for us here in 2 minutes or less?
Let's see. Final words of wisdom. Let's see. Because, really I keep going, I guess one of the things has to do with, it's kind of related to something that I told you earlier, but it has to do with motivation. That is something that a lot of resellers struggle with, is staying motivated. And I think you have to remember why it is that you're doing this, because what you want to make sure that you avoid is that you get into a situation where you start to actually hate reselling or dislike reselling because it's taking up too much of your time and it's taking you away from your family. And you might have gone into it to make some extra money so that you could take your family on vacations and spend more time with them, but you might not realize how quickly things could get out of control depending on how many other different avenues you want to get into with reselling, particularly if you start going into social media, spending a lot of time in Facebook groups, maybe starting a Facebook group, starting a YouTube channel. All these different things take up a lot of time. So it's real important. Make sure that you maintain your focus and your motivation. Remember why it is that you got into this. And if you're not liking something at a certain point, if something is no longer becoming fun, step back, take a break for a second, and just try to reassess, reanalyze things, and reshift the things that you're doing. Maybe something that you were doing that you thought was, really, important or really a good thing to do. Maybe you don't need to do that thing anymore. Maybe that's not as important. It becomes more of an optional thing, like something you might have been doing every day. So just be willing to make sure you're managing your time effectively. Keep that consistency going. Remember why it is you started this. Start those goals. Come up with a plan to achieve those goals. All those things should help you maintain your motivation over time, because you can't keep your business going effectively if you're not motivated. So that's absolutely huge.
Great words of wisdom, Dominic. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on. I was very thrilled that you accepted my invitation, and I thank you very much for your time, man. It's been great talking to you.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. It was an honor to be your first guest.
And I will put a link to the Primetime Treasure Hunter YouTube channel and eBay store and everything else down below in the comments. And again, Dominic, thank you very much. And that's it for this episode. We'll see you again very soon on another episode of M Cubed, everybody. Cheers.